Stepmom falsely claimed that I had stolen the car behind her back, leading my dad to kick me out of the house while I was bedridden from an accident. 2 years later, they wanted me to attend their vow renewal ceremony. 2 years ago, I was involved in a horrific car accident where a drunk driver rear-ended me. The accident was extremely severe for me, resulting in my being completely bedridden for 3 months. I could not move a muscle, no matter how hard I tried, due to the intense pain. Despite my severe injuries, this did not seem to matter to my dad, who still decided to kick me out of the house. At that time, I was 18 years old and had borrowed the car to practice for my driver's license test, which was just a few days away. I had not driven far. The accident occurred in our neighborhood. I had explicitly asked my stepmom for permission to use the car, as my father had instructed that I needed to seek approval from at least one parent before taking the car out in any situation. Since my dad was at work, I asked her, and she granted permission. However, she later altered her story, making it seem as if I had taken the car without permission to visit friends and to look cool, claiming that I had snuck out without asking her. My dad chose to believe her account without hearing my side of the story and decided to kick me out. My stepmom had always been distant and odd towards me, but I never expected her to lie to my dad and have me kicked out of the house. She had been a part of my life since I was 4 years old, while my biological mother was never involved after giving birth. She simply decided she did not want to be a mother anymore and relinquished her parental rights. She and my dad were never married, which made it easier for her to leave. My father took on the responsibility of raising me alone without questioning it. My stepmom had never shown any genuine interest in being a mother to me, and I accepted that. When my father started dating my stepmom, I was 4 years old, and they married after 3 years of dating. By that time, I realized that my stepmother had no interest in being a mother figure. She was merely my father's wife. As a child, we did not get along well, and she generally avoided me. As I grew older, our relationship deteriorated further. We would argue frequently, even over trivial matters. She would escalate these arguments to extreme levels and then complain to my father about my supposedly terrible behavior. He always sided with her, which was incredibly frustrating, as she was the one initiating unnecessary conflicts. I was looking forward to going to college in a few months, but that plan never materialized. Instead, I ended up having to move in with my grandparents because my father no longer wanted me. It was not a financial issue. My dad is quite wealthy, owning a paper company and having medical insurance for the entire family, including the car. Therefore, it was not about money. The real reason for my expulsion was the fabricated story my stepmom told my father about the accident. She created a nonsensical narrative that I had planned to go out with friends to look cool, which is why I had taken the car without her permission. She claimed she had overheard me discussing this and had warned me not to do such things, but I had ignored her and gone out anyway. This story emerged after the accident, during which doctors had informed me that I would be bedridden for a couple of months until I could heal enough to resume normal movement. While I was already suffering from the pain of the accident and my bedridden condition, my stepmom continued to fabricate lies about me to deceive my dad. After a week of arguing about what the truth was, I lost my temper and began shouting at her, calling her numerous names. I accused her of being a liar and suggested she was merely jealous that she could not have my father all to herself. I told her she was mentally unstable for accusing me of something I had not done, especially given my condition. This confrontation seemed to be the last straw for my father, who decided to move me to my grandparents' house, where they kindly took me in. I was deeply upset that my father chose to kick me out while I was in such a poor state. I told him that by choosing my stepmom over me, I could no longer view him the same way. He responded by saying that I needed to be disciplined and that he could not support me any longer. My father couldn't keep hurting his wife just because I didn't know how to behave and wanted to act out. It was clear to me that he had chosen her side and decided to believe her version of events because he didn't trust me. This was incredibly heartbreaking, and I resolved to never speak to him again. Making this decision was very difficult for me because from my childhood, it had just been my father and me. My stepmom had never really been part of my family. She was present, but I never considered her family, and I'm sure she felt the same way about me. After my father's decision, I concluded that neither he nor my stepmom was worthy of the title family, a term I believed carried significant responsibility. Initially, my father had tried to support me, and I respected that effort. However, in the end, he valued my stepmother far more than he valued me. After moving in with my grandparents, they took excellent care of me, even hiring a full-time nurse to assist with my needs. My grandparents were kind people with whom I had always had a good relationship. The only reason I hadn't moved in with them sooner was because I held out hope that my father might eventually change his mind, but he did not. Despite the tough luck, my grandparents were wonderful, providing care and love during a very challenging period. They tried to encourage my father to visit, but he repeatedly made excuses, citing being too busy or too tired from work. For nearly 2 months, he did not visit me once after the accident, and after he had moved me to my grandparents' house. Eventually, my grandparents confronted him about his behavior, stating it was unfair to me. My father then told them he had no intention of reconciling with me anytime soon because my stepmom no longer approved of me and had given him an ultimatum to choose between her and me. He chose her. He believed I needed to learn to be a better person and get along with others before we could have any relationship. He said he couldn't tolerate my behavior any longer for his sake and his wife's. Since then, we have not spoken. My grandparents supported me through recovery and sent me to college. They have been there for me throughout. 2 years have passed since then, and I am now preparing to graduate in a year. I've been trying to move on with my life, which has been challenging, but having good friends and supportive grandparents has made it somewhat easier. I hadn't heard from or about my parents in the past few years, and I had no intention of disrupting their lives or seeking revenge. I was managing fine without them. However, last week my stepmom reached out to me saying she and my father were renewing their wedding vows in a few weeks and wanted me to attend. I was perplexed by her request and immediately responded saying I would not attend. She insisted that I must be there because my father would formally reach out to me soon, explaining that some of his business associates, who had seen family photos on his desk, would be present. It would look odd to them if I were absent, and my father wanted to make amends. She urged me to accept the invitation and move past everything, but I was not ready to forgive or forget so soon. I ignored her message and tried to move on with my day. A few hours later, after receiving no response, she messaged me again, calling me an ungrateful brat who didn't know how to behave. She accused me of trying to be difficult, even when my dad was trying to make things right with me, despite my undeserving attitude. She threatened that I could either attend the event or forfeit any hopes of inheriting my father's business or money in the future. She said she would insure it, which really pissed me off because she honestly thought she could scare me with those cringe threats. That's when I finally blocked her, as she had gotten on my last nerve. Before this, I had only blocked them on social media but had left their phone numbers open, thinking it was unnecessary. However, after that message, I blocked both their numbers as well. I expected that would be the end of it, but apparently it wasn't enough. She reached out again via email, insisting that I absolutely had to accept the invitation because the vow renewal wasn't just a personal event, but also related to my father's work. She stressed that he desperately wanted me there. Even then, she couldn't adopt a nicer tone, especially since it was them who needed me. She continued to threaten me to get her way, and I decided I had had enough. There was no need for me to avoid the situation any longer, so I decided to confront it publicly. I wrote a detailed post outlining all the conversations we had had and everything that had happened in the past. I made a public post tagging my dad and stepmom along with a few of his work friends whose names and profiles I recognized. I did this deliberately because I wanted his business associates to know what he had done to me, given that the vow renewal was also a business event for them. I didn't expect much to come of it, but a day later, my grandparents informed me that my father was devastated. Apparently, my post had led to a significant problem for them. They were in the early stages of a merger with an office supplies company, but now it was likely falling through because of my post. The merger was a big deal for his company, and since I had tagged certain people, word spread about what had happened. My father's reputation took a hit, and he believed the post was the reason for the setback. My grandparents think what I did was probably not a good move and that there was no need to involve my father, given that it was my stepmom who was being unkind. I now feel somewhat guilty for making that public post and calling out my father and stepmom. Update. Hi, it's been a couple of days since my original post, and I decided to take it down. Some of you have asked why I referred to my dad and stepmom as my parents since it's clear that we don't get along. Well, my dad is my biological parent, and even though I don't like my stepmother, I've known her since I was a child, so I'm used to calling them my parents. It's not anything deep, just a habit. Returning to what I did, I removed the post and unblocked my father to reach out to him. Many in the comments felt I didn't owe anyone an apology, but I thought it was right to acknowledge that I didn't intend for such a severe consequence. I was unaware of the merger's significance to his business. I didn't exactly apologize, but rather justified my actions, explaining that the events of 2 years ago still affect me. It was hurtful to learn that his attempt to reconcile was just a facade for his business associates. The way my stepmom treated me was insulting, which led me to make that post. I sent him a message explaining all this, not expecting a reply. However, he did respond, saying it was fine and that he deserved this after everything he had done. He didn't blame me for my reaction, which was a strange response. I decided to discuss it with my grandparents, hoping they might understand why he seemed to be acting so oddly. I definitely expected him to be at least angry and berate me for what I had done, but nothing of the sort happened. When I asked my grandparents about this, they told me that he had been regretting his actions for a long time, and everything came to a head with my post. They said they had discussed these issues with him recently before I sent that text, and he had expressed how much he regretted kicking me out. He admitted it was his personal choice, but he was confused at the time. My stepmother had convincingly painted my behavior as bratty and awful, which he had believed. However, he started doubting her claims a few weeks after kicking me out and had never found the courage to make things right with me. Knowing he deserved this reaction, he didn't retaliate or argue when I sent him that text. They also explained that he genuinely wanted to invite me to the vow renewal, and it wasn't just a ploy to impress his business associates, as my stepmother had claimed. In fact, his business associates were not even invited. It was supposed to be a very close and intimate event. He didn't understand why she would say otherwise, possibly to create a rift between us. He had seen the screenshots I posted and realized that my stepmother had a habit of lying. They had hit a rough patch as well. He hadn't heard back from the people involved in the merger yet, so he assumed it was probably called off and was expecting a formal notice later. For now, his personal life is in turmoil, and he's trying to deal with that. After discussing with my grandparents, I'm unsure how to feel. They told me they were proud of me for reaching out, even if it wasn't to apologize, as they believe no apology is necessary due to the misunderstanding created by my stepmother. I had reacted as anyone would have in my place, but still had the courtesy to try to make things right. They appreciate that, but I'm still conflicted. Things have been bad between us for the past 2 years, and not having contact with him initially helped me cope with my emotions. Now, I'm unsure how to process everything. Update 2. Hey, so many comments on my previous update advised me to maintain no contact with my father. I don't think that's the right path for me. I've already broken the no contact rule by reaching out to him after the post, so going back seems impractical. There are still many unresolved issues and unanswered questions I have. I don't think I can go back to no contact without at least having one discussion to get some closure. I don't care if people think I'm weak or foolish. I know what feels right to me and what's good for my well being. I spoke to my grandparents about my feelings and suggested that we should have a conversation with my father. They agreed it was a good idea and are working on arranging a meeting. From what I know, things between him and my stepmother are not going well, and they might be headed for a divorce. I'm not sure yet, but it would be ironic if they were about to renew their vows only to end up separating. Returning to what my grandparents told me, they are in touch with my father and trying to rebuild their relationship with him. They understand that they don't have as much time left as I do and want to make the most of it. They believe my dad is genuinely remorseful for past mistakes. He seems more focused on his failings as a father than on the merger, showing that he's truly regretful. I don't think I've ever tried to see things from his perspective before. My grandparents told me they would speak to him and let me know when we could meet, and I just hope it goes well. Update 3. Hello. 2 days ago, I finally met with my father after 2 years of no contact. We met at my grandparents' house, and it was very emotional. I still can't believe I finally got to sit down and talk to him about everything that had been bothering me and got answers to questions I'd been pondering for so long. He started by apologizing for what he had put me through. He said he knew he had failed as a father and didn't even deserve to be in the same room as me, because I had turned out to be a better person than he ever imagined, and he had no role in that, which I don't think is entirely true. To be honest, he was the one who raised me pretty much single handedly. My stepmother kept avoiding me when I was younger. Our relationship only soured as I grew older, especially with the issues between my stepmother and me. But before that, he had always been a great father. He admitted he made many mistakes, the worst of which was trusting my stepmother over me. He explained he had assumed she was telling the truth because she was older, and he never thought she would lie. When it was just the two of them, she was very convincing and manipulative. He confessed he had been misled and was confused about whom to trust, which led to him making the wrong call. Even after he started doubting himself, he lacked the courage to confront his mistakes and talk to me, which is why he hadn't reached out after kicking me out. He said he was truly sorry from the bottom of his heart, and now it was up to me whether to accept his apology and work on our relationship or not. He told me that even if I decided not to forgive him and go back to no contact, he would be fine with it because he knew he had made a colossal mistake and had to accept whatever decision I made. I also learned that he and my stepmother were heading for a divorce. She had already moved out. After seeing the screenshots I posted, he confronted her about why she lied about the vow renewal invitation. They had a big fight, and she admitted to everything, including lying 2 years ago about the car accident. With this revelation, he could no longer stay with her and filed for divorce. It was hard for me to make a decision on the spot, so I told him I needed time to think. Right now, I'm trying to decide whether to give him a second chance. I know most people might say I shouldn't, but ultimately he's my father and only I can make that decision. As an adult now, I don't rely on him for anything, and he doesn't need to rely on me. After graduating college, I'll have my own job and be financially independent, so that's not a factor here. In case anyone thinks he's trying to reconcile with me just to rely on me later, his business is doing well regardless of the merger. His reputation took a hit, but his sales and numbers did not, so it's clear he's not seeking my support for financial reasons. This is about a purely emotional relationship between a father and daughter. Now, I need to decide whether to work on that relationship. I'm leaning towards yes because he's the only parent I've ever had. Despite the past few difficult years, I can't let that overshadow everything he has done right. I'm still unsure, which is why I'm posting this to get opinions. I genuinely want to make things right and have a real chance at a normal family. Please keep that in mind when commenting. Update 4. So I've decided to try and work on my relationship with my father. We're starting therapy together next week, and I hope it works out. We also plan to rebuild our relationship by communicating more often. My grandparents are really happy about it, and I feel hopeful for the future. I'm genuinely ready to put everything in the past and move on.